So let's return to our top story and those IS files obtained by Sky News, which have led to a handful of arrests in Denmark. National security analyst Ari Aramesh joins me now from Houston. Mr. Aramesh, thanks very much for joining us here on Sky News. Let's talk about these arrests in Denmark. Is this evidence that this cache of information is giving authorities the upper hand in their pursuit of suspects?
First of all, I got to say, the fact that Sky News was able to break this story and get these files is incredible. These files, we're talking about 22 to 25,000 names, a questionnaire of about 23 questions each. That's about a good 500 to 600,000 slots, all hard pieces of information about where you're coming from, who you are, where you live, what you did, and most importantly, the recruiting network that recruited these young individuals, mostly young men from Denmark, Belgium, and France. So it's a real important resource for the intelligence and law enforcement communities across the world, in Europe and in the United States. On top of that, we've got to keep in mind that Denmark and Belgium have the highest per capita numbers of ISIS fighters. Not just sheer numbers, we're talking about per capita. Denmark and Belgium have sent a lot of fighters to Iraq and to Syria. So this is pretty big, this is important, but I really hope that down the road we give law enforcement, especially our intelligence communities in Europe, our intel counterparts and colleagues in Europe, the tools they need to fight these battles. September 11, 2001 was a real wake-up call for the American intelligence community, the American law enforcement community, and the American lawmakers to make sure that, A, we protect civil liberties, but at the same time, we make sure that we have the tools necessary to combat terror before it actually comes to our shore.
All this paperwork, so many documents that the IS officials were made to sort of fill out, it could end up being their biggest downfall, couldn't it?
It certainly could. There's a real obsession with totalitarian, oppressive, terrorizing regimes to archive and file and get as much information as possible. I don't want to name names, but a lot of regimes in the past have done a very good job collecting names and data, not only about their own henchmen, but also about their victims. So ISIS is no different. Keep in mind that the upper echelon of ISIS leadership are former Ba'athist Iraqi Saddam Hussein combat officers. These are intelligence and combat officers who form most of ISIS's top brass. Yes, there are a lot of foreigners and a lot of Syrians in the front lines, but the key fighters here and the key leadership here is Iraqi. They have that experience. They know how to file, how to track, how to gather information. But that could be their downfall as well. So you got an organization that is very good at gathering information. At the same time, it's very good at showing brute force and extreme levels of brutality. Yet the combination of both that brought them to power can also bring them down as well.
And now that we've got the names and addresses of the extremists who have slipped back into Europe, should it be much easier for our authorities to pick them up?
It should be, but again, let's not count on all these addresses and locations to be exactly accurate. One of the Danish recruits who was actually recruited, I think, by Abu Hafiz al-Pakistani, he put down his address, the local mosque that the imam was not to be found. He was in Mecca. No one could get a hold of him. So a lot of these addresses may not be 100% accurate. Having said that, the key important piece of information here is not just names, locations, and occupations. The most important piece of information, in my experience, in my opinion, are the recruiters. In what network? Who is recommending you to go to Iraq, to go to Syria through Turkey? Who is picking you up, giving you that doctrinal and ideological training and brainwashing? And most importantly, just like the mob, you need a guy to sponsor you, to be a made guy. Who is recommending you or sponsoring you to join the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria? And that's the key piece of information here. The recruiting network, not just the victims and not just the Johns.
With the attacks in Brussels and Paris, why do there seem to be flaws in the surveillance systems, and how can countries in Europe work better together in terms of their security intelligence services?
And that's a really, really important question. What we have to always strike a balance between civil liberties and gathering information and security. Post 9/11, we had Patriot Act 1 and then Patriot Act 2. It went too far, yet it also enabled our law enforcement and intelligence forces and intelligence community to gather information. We had the bulk mega data program, for instance. Yes, it went too far, but through the grace of U.S. courts, and also a different president and the efforts of the legislative branch, it scaled that program back. Europe has not had any of those. We always wonder why United Kingdom has done a better job compared to France or Belgium. Well, the United Kingdom has always had a much better way of handling information, gathering intel, and most importantly, integrating and assimilating immigrants. It's very important to know that we are all, at least in the United States, are first, second, third, fourth, fifth generation immigrants. It's important to have people from those communities to work with you. If you really want to work with the Muslim community, you have to have people from those communities. You have to buy their trust. You have to have their trust and the respect, vice versa. That is not necessarily the case in many places in Europe. MI6 and MI5 have done a very good job in your neck of the woods. I don't think the French and the Belgians are on par yet with the program. Yet, that is just one problem in the equation. The second part is the legal tools necessary to be able to read emails, to prevent some of these attacks is not yet there. French attacks prepared the French public for the French parliament to go ahead and implement some of these laws. Same thing will eventually happen in Belgium. But why can't we be a little more proactive and preemptive? Why not give intelligence and law enforcement the tools they need before there is a terror attack? At the same time, let's keep in mind, our values, our societies, our homes, and our communities are good, open, and Western when we have freedoms and privacy. So we have to strike a very good balance between security and privacy and freedom.
Mr. Aramesh, thank you very much for your time. Fascinating stuff speaking to you here on Sky News. Thank you.